Hi, Phoebe. Thanks for joining us at the Book Dragon today.
Thanks, Michelle. It's good to be here.
So, we're here to talk about your short story and essay collection, Time is of the Essence, which is obviously available at the Book Dragon.
Thank you. Yes, we are.
Yeah. So, I'm going to ask you a few questions so you can get to know a little bit more about you.
Okay, that's great.
Okay. So, why did you choose time as the central theme in this collection?
Well, to be honest, it just happened that the stories that I had written were following a pattern. And I
Mhm.
think you can look for patterns in just about anything, really. But when I read over the stories I'd already completed, I realized that there was a recurring theme. I then explored a few more stories and then added them to the collection as well. So, of course, I've lived quite a few years now. And the older I get, the more I realize that it's the time that we live and the time that we give to others that is the essence of a well-lived life. So
Mhm.
I sort of thought that it sort of encompasses the whole thing, really.
Yeah, I do love the title. It's one that definitely jumps out at you.
Oh, good, thank you.
Mhm.
It did take a while to
Um,
think about the title, I have to admit.
yeah. So, at what age did you start to write, Phoebe?
Well, um, I think that as soon as I could read and write, that's when I began actually writing little stories. I would just write little stories for my mum. And before I was actually writing them, I was telling them. So my
Mhm.
mum was telling me a story about a time when she was doing some preserving of carrots. She used to go down to the markets and she'd buy massive, great big Hessian bags full of carrots. And I was young and I was just sitting on the floor getting these carrots in their size order and making up these little stories about this carrot family with their mummy carrot and daddy carrot and baby carrots and things like that. So I guess I've always been a bit of a storyteller. Um, but when I was actually in school, I would find story writing fascinating. One of my headmasters had actually thought that a ghost story that I'd written was well enough for me to have to write it out in very nice writing, which was very difficult for me because I don't write very nicely, not
Mhm.
neatly anyway. So he could put it up on his window. And another headmaster, I was in a very small school. It was just a two-room school, and Mr. James was our headmaster, and he lived next door. And he had this massive, great big dog called Lara. She was a Great Dane, and she used to always jump over the fence and terrorize the children. I mean, she was so sweet, really, but we were all so small. And I read a
Yeah.
story about him having to chase this dog around in the thunderstorm and all that sort of stuff. And he quite liked that as well. But, stories have developed since then quite
Yeah.
considerably.
So, what appeals to you about short stories?
Well, short stories, I have an incredibly busy work life, in the
Mhm.
real world. Um, and I don't have a lot of time. So I find that short stories, I can sort of think about something and it doesn't take, I know it sounds terrible, it doesn't take that long. It's not that difficult to think about a short story. And I can sort of, well, say that in about a week or two, I can have a short story written. I can have a few short story written if the muse is working for me. Um, and I have tried to make longer stories. It doesn't always work that way, but short stories, they're quick, they're easy, they're a good quick read for people who just want to have a quick read anyway. They don't have much time themselves. It's just, it's good. I like short stories. I do like good long novels as well, just saying.
So, have you ever been tempted to develop one of your short stories into a novel?
I've tried with the short stories. But I think because a lot of them are just a story within themselves and they're just a
Yeah.
little bit of life, and I don't really know how to develop that further. But I am working on other stories that are quite a bit longer than that anyway. One of the collections I'm working on at the moment is a group of detective stories, for example, and they're
Oh,
all maybe 10 to 20,000 words long, so they're a longer version. But
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that
short
sounds
stories are fun though.
exciting. So, in one of your stories in Time of the Essence, you cover a real life event that was the Manchester bombing, that I'm sure a lot of people will remember,
Yeah.
with the Ariana Grande concert. I was just wondering if you had any personal connection to that story.
Yes, this is literally a lived experience. I wasn't at the concert myself.
Hmm.
It was my youngest daughter who had gone.
Oh.
Um, and it was she's the baby of the family. Sorry, but she's the baby. And, you do tend to mother the baby a little bit more than you do the others because, empty nester sort of thing, getting close. And I'd always waited up for it. Every time she went out, I'd wait up for her. And this particular time I thought, no, it's all right. I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed. She'll come home when she's ready. And when she's done, that's fine. And then she woke, it was very, very early in the wee hours of the morning when she came home, and because I'd gone to bed, I hadn't seen any news or nothing. I knew nothing about it. And then she came home and told me all about it, and not just the bombing itself, but how difficult it was then to actually get back home. And because obviously the train station where that she would have gotten to is where the bombing was, so she had to sort of find out how to get to the other one. Never did find it. And they called up one of the girls' brothers, I think it was, who then came to pick them all up and bring them home. But it just sort of brings home to you how fleeting life could be. I was lucky, I was lucky. My daughter came home. There was some mothers whose children didn't come home. Some mothers who didn't come home to their families as well. It wasn't. So for me, it wasn't. I guess it wasn't as heartbreaking as it could have been. So I'm very grateful. I'm very, very aware of how lucky I really was at that time.
I imagine it was very emotional to write that story then, if it's something that you'd actually been through.
Yeah, it was. I often, a lot of my short stories are based on something that's happened anyway. And so I find that writing it out, whether I'm embellishing it, this one I didn't embellish, but a lot of the others, they're based on fact, very loosely, very loosely. But it's a way of working through any issues that you might have, for example. And so even though, yes, it was a harrowing thing to write, it also helped me to make sense of it, really, I guess. Well, as much as you can make sense of something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So you've obviously written about another real life event, the events of 9/11 in a previous short story collection, which is also available at the Book Dragon. It's the point of view, it's all relative, really. And what I loved about that is the way you were able to slip effortlessly into the shoes, of somebody else in that experience. I mean, have you got any experience with that situation, or is it just, you being able to empathize?
Yeah, that is totally different. It's definitely not a personal lived experience. But like, I'm sure everybody can kind of remember what was happening when what was happening in their life when this actually happened. So I was on my way to university, saw this on the screen when I was getting the fuel, thought it was a well done movie. I thought, wow, that looks so real. When I got to uni, I was studying journalism, and when I got to uni, everyone was talking about it, and then that's when I realized, oh my gosh, that was real. And so the next few days, I guess, we'd spent a lot of time discussing it in class, as you would do, and looking at the actual media coverage, and the photos, the video footage, everything was just so poignant. And so I don't know, I guess a lot of what I wrote in there then is based on my impressions of what that person in that picture or what person in that situation might have been feeling. And I chose, to sort of personify the Statue of Liberty at the same time, because I thought, that's just I don't think she could actually, she's a real, I don't think she could actually see it anyway. I think the way she's facing is away. So I use a bit of poetic license to have her turn and look at it. But I think the one that really hit me was, because I'm a mother, the one where the man on the plane had called his wife or called somebody to tell them what was going on. And then of course his the plane that went into the field. So I as a mother, as a wife, I was sort of thinking, how would I feel? I would have been there rushing the kids, ready to get them ready to school. All these things would have been going on in my head, and think, oh, for goodness sake, why are you calling me? What the heck? I'm busy. And then she realizes what's going on. And I just sort of thought, yeah, that would be me. I'd be cursing him a little bit in my head and thinking, just let me get on with my life, for goodness sake. I'm so busy. I'm on my way to pick you up. And then just the realization would have struck. I I guess I just put myself in their shoes, and
Mhm.
I could just feel how I would feel and wrote it. I've had grown men cry at that particular bit.
I
Which
admit that I cried myself when I read it, and I know you actually won a prize for excellence in fiction for that story.
I
So,
did, yeah. I kind of feel a little bit guilty about it. It's like, benefiting from someone else's suffering.
mm.
Um, but I don't know. I guess that's what writers do in a way, anyway, don't they? So I
I
sort of had
think
to.
being able to put yourself in other people's shoes is a wonderful gift. So I think sharing that with the world is definitely not something to, feel guilty about, because it helps other people cope with their emotions.
True, true. And like I say,
Mhm.
that's what I do anyway. I use that sort of, I use writing as a medium to cope with my own feelings anyway. And so that's, I guess, what my way of coping with that particular one as well. So,
Mhm.
and I also cried when I wrote it, cried when I watched it. I just cried. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next for you then? You give us a little bit of hint that you're working on some longer stories.
oh, I'm working on longer stories. I'm working on another short story loads of short story collections.
Hmm.
Um, so one of the things I'm working on is like a dystopian society that's finding their way to a new Earth. That's one of them. It's a 3-part series, and I've almost finished part 2. I
Oh.
started writing part 2 and then realized, oh, actually, there's a part 1 and a part 3 to this, so I've got to go back and do those. So I don't know. And then I've got a 5-part fantasy saga that I'm working on. That one actually has a
Oh,
dragon in
wow. Oh, brilliant.
it. Yeah, I'm hoping to get that one done at some point. And then I've several standalone novels. Um, I I can't really choose a genre. That's my problem. I can't choose a genre because I read so extensively, and
Hmm.
and I just love so many different things. So I'm also working on a crime novel, um, my crime stories, my little slice of life stories. I don't know. I don't think I could ever settle for one.
Oh, well, I
I'll try.
hope whatever you do next that we get to see more of your work on Sailing the Book Dragon.
Well, I certainly plan on popping them in there when I get them done. So
Excellent.
hopefully.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us here today, Phoebe. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great
Okay.
talking to you too.
Bye for now.
Hey, bye bye.